Alright, welcome back to another Fortnite video. Today we're going to be ranking the Chapter 2 named locations. This is found on TierMaker. Support TierMaker creators. We're going to start with Greasy Grove, which I am trying to figure out why it's on this list. I don't think it's actually in Chapter 2, they just added it here. So I'm just going to place it down here in the tier of, I don't know why it's here. But anyway, we're going to start with the shark because Greasy Grove was not in this map, and we're just gonna rank based on Chuck Norris God, best locations, S tier location, a location that Chuck Norris the God would land at. Good games, basically just a location that's good to land at, pretty great overall. Probably either has good location or A tier loot. Average just means it's an average location. You wouldn't land here with a squad to just load up, loot up, and then head towards the storm. Duos but bad, just a bad location. Not even a good location, just like overall, you would just land here with your friend, loot up and head to the storm. You wouldn't even really stay here that much. And solo only when depressed just means you landed here as a solo when you were depressed and just wanted to get loot and go to the storm, or die of fall damage, so you could just do like the challenge of outlast opponents or go to this location. But anyway, those are your tiers. Let's go to the shark. The shark has a really terrible location, has not that much good loot. It did have a boss location though in season 2, so I would say duos but bad. You would go here to loot up with your friend and then head out towards the storm. And that's pretty much all you would do. Sludgy Swamp was the wrecked location of Slurpy Swamp, which means it had a bad location and a bad loot, but also had slurp barrels, which means it was still an average location. Not as good as Slurpy Swamp, but it did have slurp barrels, which meant it basically meant you were going to walk out of there with full shields no matter what. Hunter's Haven was located in the middle of the map, so obviously it's going to be average, but I think that's pretty much all it would be because it didn't have not a lot of loot. And now that I say it, it really did not have much loot. So I'm going to have to put in duos but bad. It didn't really have a lot of loot, only like 5 manor homes and a chest near the lake. It had a really good location, but overall it just wasn't that good. Didn't have a lot of loot. 2 squads would land here, and I feel like only 1 squad would actually get good guns, so not that good. Boney Burbs was wrecked Salty Towers. I actually hate this location, personally. It looked really nice, but it just wasn't that good for rotation. And now that I think of it, Chapter 2 had a lot of locations that I just didn't like, so this one's just going to go in average. It had really good loot and a really good location, so actually my personal hatred for Season 5 in general because of how just like it wasn't terrible, but it was just like it just didn't feel that right. I mean, the crafting was really good overall, and honestly, I don't hate this location now that I think about it. It was just a weird time in the game where it was like I wasn't playing as much. The crafting was awesome, but just the event in general of Season 5 with the giant tower with the orb on top just really didn't sit right, so I'll put it in good games because it had really good loot, but it really wasn't. I'm just going to put it in average. I'll put it above Sludgy Swamp, and it'll probably be the best average location, but overall just really good loot and really good location, but Season 5 was just kind of I didn't really think of it as that much of a season. Frenzy Farm, better than Fatal Fields, but not as good as Anarchy. I'm going to put it as average, but below Boney Burbs. Good location, mid-tier loot, and was just another farm. Stealthy Stronghold, the Predator location. This is going to be a solo, but only when depressed, because really it had bad loot. It had average loot, but it was really weird. After the Predator event was over, nothing really happened here. So really the only thing I can say about this location is that you landed here to get 99 plus wood and some brick and metal. Got some good guns, but actually now that I think about it, I'm going to move it up here, but just towards the end. You can land here in duos and squad, but only 1 squad would pretty much land here. Get loaded up and then head to the storm, because this place was never in the storm. Corny Crops, I hated Season 5. This was just a weird thing where the Coliseum just became like a farm area. It wasn't terrible, but then again, I didn't really like Season 5 because of the whole it just came after such a great season of season 4, and it just felt kind of lackluster. So I am gonna put it like below the Shark, but not as bad as Hunter's Haven and not as bad as Stealthy Stronghold. Weeping Woods, this is gonna go in good games. Good location, had a river, was a giant location, 99 plus wood, and had some good loot. So honestly, I'm going to put it in good games. I really like this location and wish it would come back sometime in the future, but probably not. The rig had terrible location. This is one of those, it's literally just, it's solo, but only one depressed. I would only land here just to get 99 plus metal and then some good chests and stuff, but really wouldn't go here otherwise. Rickety Rig was better. The rig was just kind of weird in the fact that it didn't sit right. I guess it's duo. It did have enough loot to merit duos, maybe, but not enough for like maybe two squads landed here, you'd be okay. But if you got more than two squads, you weren't going to be walking out of here with much. Retail row, I mean, obviously it's going to be going in the god tier. I mean, it's basically the same retail row, but just at a better location. Had mountains, so it was good to snipe from, and a good rotation of the storm. So overall, pretty good location. Craggy Cliffs is going to go in the solo only when depressed. You really wouldn't come here that much unless it had slurp barrels and a good amount of loot, but otherwise wasn't able to really rotate out of this place that much. So I'm going to put it in solo only when depressed. I do want to add a tier below this for locations that I do just hate, so I am going to do that. I am just going to put a no, I didn't want a thing, I just want to add a row below. And that didn't do anything great. I like how this website is laggy even though I'm not really doing anything. But I am going to add a new tier below everything, and it's just going to be bad locations, because I feel like Craggy Cliffs is not a bad location, it's just like the worst location, because I feel like Craggy Cliffs isn't bad, it's just really hard to rotate out of, so I'm just going to put it there for the worst locations. Looking at that, Believer Beach was more of a weird location where it was kind of weird. It was like Sweaty Sands, but also had a little bit more loot. So I do have to, try and some believability in this. It was as good as Sweaty Sands, but I didn't really like Sweaty Sands that much. But it did have good games. It had a lot of loot. So I mean, it was just like a better Sweaty Sands, which I would put in average because I didn't like it. The Grotto is one of the worst locations that was ever added into Fortnite. You couldn't really do anything with it. It was just an underground base that would always fill with water. After Season 3, it filled with water, so it basically wasn't even useful. It was just a hole in the ground. And I didn't really go here that much. It did have the minigun, but people would usually just carry the minigun to endgame anyway, so just kill the person who had it. And that was pretty much it. Coral Castle. This is a good games. This is a good games location. I mean, people don't really like it. I didn't really like it that much, but I do find it to be one of the most creative locations ever. With the texture, all the coral, and there was so much loot here. So it's not going to be a god tier because I didn't really like Season 4 that much, but I will put it in good games because you could actually land here and get decent loot. Now the Asian Agency. I actively hated this location. Season 2 was not a good season overall. I did not like Season 2 of Chapter 2. In the Agency, I just hated going there. I never really got out of there alive, and when I did, I came out with garbage loot. So, didn't really like the Agency. It has the best location, but I didn't like it that much. Colossal Crops, just corny crops, but with like a couple more chests, I guess, so it'll go ahead of corny crops, but not by much. Still duos, but bad. Salty Towers. I don't think anybody really has to debate on this one. It's Tilted Towers, came back into the game and was actually also at Salty Springs. Basically a god tier location. Best location, best loot. I mean, what else can you get from Salty Towers at that point? Now, Salty Towers is not as good as Tilted Towers because it doesn't have enough buildings to compete, but it's definitely up there. The Fortila, this one I'm going to put in good games. I wanted to put it in God tier because it does have the best loot because Tilted Towers doesn't exist. This had the most loot besides maybe Coral Castle. And just really, it had a really good rotation, had launch pads, had boats. But really, the location is so bad that you can't really put it in God tier. It's just, in order for it to be God tier, it has to be somewhat good on location wise and has to have somewhat good loot. And that being said, Sweaty Sands, just basically Believer Beach, but worse. I mean, I didn't like Sweaty Sands that much. I landed there somewhat, but it was an average location. I do like building this in creative though. It is a fun location to build. Holly Hatchery, on the other hand, is going to go in the hated locations. I'm going to put it above the agency. The agency is one of my worst favorite locations. Holly Hatchery was just dumb. I didn't really like landing Holly that much. And when I did, I liked it better as Holly Hedges, not with a giant anti-gravity thing in the middle. The Alien season was one of the worst seasons that was ever in Fortnite, and I just didn't like it that much. And that's why Holly Hatchery is going to go down here. Had a bad location, had very, very bad loot, and really only came here to get like a couple brick and a couple wood and then head out. Steamy Stacks, this is going to go in God tier location because those smokestacks meant you could go to the center of the map by just using them and flying towards you could literally get almost to the center of the map from that far away. Had really good loot, and you could get 99 plus metal, somewhat average brick and wood, and use the steam stacks and go all the way to the center of the map. You can go to wherever the storm was, and even if it was far away, you had cars as well, so you could use cars if you wanted to. In fact, you could drive the car to the steam stack and use the steam stack with the car to drive all the way from where you landed from the steam stack. So got your location. I don't know why Loot Lake is here. There was no Loot Lake. This person did not do this well. Yeah, Loot Lake's not even here. So, gonna put in solely only when depressed, but it's mostly depressed that it's gone and wasn't in Chapter 2. Colossal Coliseum. I did not like this location, but I am gonna put it in solo only when depressed because I do know people who did come here. I'm gonna put Craggy Cliffs above it though because I don't think that the Coliseum deserves to be ranked above Craggy Cliffs. Because Coliseum had terrible loot, you couldn't build, and you couldn't really destroy any of the walls here. So all you could do is just mine the things in the bottom. So you weren't even coming out here with good resources. Terrible loot, terrible building materials, average location. So you only landed here if you wanted to like fight the boss or fight someone else in the Coliseum and then leave. Slurpy Swamp. That is a god tier location above Retail Row. Bad location. It's like Sludgy Swamp, but it has better loot and has almost infinite slurp barrels and slurp and just infinite healing everywhere. So no matter how many kills you got, no matter how much damage you received, you would be walking out of here with full health and shields like nothing ever happened. Lazy Lake. I do have a fond memory of Lazy Lake. I like landing here. It was basically the dumbed down Tilted Towers, but it did have boats, so you could rotate out of it pretty easily, and also had cars. Had a bunch of loot, was really good on materials, so good games overall. The Spire actively hated this location, so it goes worse than the Grotto because even though it had a lot of loot, it was really just didn't really like the landing here. Just everyone landed here. It was kind of garbage if you did because you either got really terrible loot or you got eliminated by the person who fought the boss and got the OP weapons. Holly Hedges. I already talked about this place before, but I'm just going to put it in solo only when depressed. I will rank it above the Coliseum because I don't like the Coliseum that much. But Holly Hedges, bad location, bad loot, bad materials, just bad in general. Corny Complex. It's basically corny crops, but also just like really weird. Could you drag it? There we go. I'm going to put, you can see it. Crops, Corny Complex. It's just basically, it's better than Corny Crops, I guess, but not that, not that good. Let's just say that. Just not as good. And then Pleasant Park. Pleasant Park was pretty good, if I would put it up here. It wasn't as good as Sweaty Sands, and it just had mid-tier loot, average building materials, average location. It was pretty average location, but also obviously it's Pleasant Park. And with cars, it doesn't matter your location at that point because you can drive wherever. So pretty good games overall. A squad could land at each house, and this you could basically have a giant squad battle. Rickety Rig was worse than the rig. You only landed here if you were solo, and I'm gonna put it above Holly Hedges because I didn't really like Holly Hedges that much. So yeah, bad location, somewhat average loot, and really just needed to take a boat to get out of here. So pretty bad location overall. Misty Meadows, this one is a good location. I like this location a lot, and I'm going to put it in God tier. Now, the reason why I'm putting in... Actually, I can't put it in God tier. I'm going to put it as the best overall location in good games, though. It's not a God tier location. It had 35 chests, which was better than Happy Hamlet. It had a pretty good location, and it had boats, so you can obviously rotate out easily, as well as cars. It just had a lot of good loot. 35 chests, almost 50 ammo boxes, and you can get 99 plus wood, 99 plus brick. The only thing you couldn't really get much of was metal, but everything else was pretty good for this location. So one of my favorites to land at for sure. The yacht is solo when depressed. You would only land here if you were a soloist, and you'd fight like 4 soloists for loot. That's literally all you would go here for. The Authority. I like this better than the Agency, but still hated this location. It was in the center of the map, didn't really do that much. No one really liked this location. Anybody who landed here was just landing here to get loot and get out. Because if you try to fight here, the corridors, like close combat in this location was pretty bad. So overall, didn't really like this location that much. The Ruins, I don't think any of us have to debate why this location is pretty bad. Not a lot of loot, not a lot of chests. It was just pretty much just, it was just the Authority but worse. The Agency but worse. Risky Reels, this is going to go in average. Pretty much the best location when it comes... It had the best location, pretty mid-tier loot. It was just average in general, but it's Risky Reels. It has to be near the top. It's pretty much the only location in Fortnite that just keeps coming back. Which I do like, because it got completely demolished by the block for no reason whatsoever. Dirty Docks is a good location. I would put it above... I wouldn't put it above Lazy Lake, but it has more loot than Lazy Lake does, and it has more materials, and now that I think about it, I am going to put it above Lazy Lake, because even though it didn't have as many chests, it was just such a fun location to land at, and it had 4 vending machines, which is pretty overpowered of how vending machines were back then. And it also had a bunch of loot, had 34 chests, almost as much as Misty Meadows, and it had more chests than Lazy Lake, and even though the location wasn't as bad, you had cars at that point, so you could just get in a car and rotate to the circle. Doom's Domain was basically just Pleasant Park with more chests, but I didn't really like this location. I'm not going to put it that far down the list, but I'm going to say I did not like Doom's Domain. It just added a castle to the location for no reason whatsoever. And the bunker under the soccer stadium was kind of just like, no one really cared that much. It had the LMG, which was pretty cool, but otherwise, I just got it for the LMG and I left as immediately as I could. Catty Corner, solo when depressed. I didn't really like this location that much, but I would land here from time to time with friends. It was a pretty overall okay location, but just didn't have a lot of loot. Had the worst loot, worst materials, pretty average location, so it was just kind of like a stop and go scenario. And Stark Industries, pretty much one of the worst locations to go to, but you got some good gear when you were there, so I'm not going to put it in the worst tier. I'm just waiting for this website to not be laggy. And where'd I put it? Solo when depressed? No, I'm putting it in good. Good games, I'm going to put it behind Coral Castle because I do still hate this location, but it had average loot, average location. The only reason you came here is for the Iron Man stuff. Don't even lie. That's the only reason you came here. and it was pretty much worth it because the Stark Energy Blaster was pretty worth it. So that's my ranking of the Chapter 2 named POI locations. I think I did an overall good job. Obviously, if you think that the Authority and the agency should be above, you obviously landed there and came to like those locations. I just everything in the worst category, I just hated landing there. So it's not that they're necessarily bad. I just hated landing at those locations. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Like if you like, dislike if you don't, subscribe if you like it, and I'll see you guys later. Toodaloo!